Welcome to Under the Black Flag. My name is Travis Limoges. Thank you for joining me today on the first episode of many in which we will dissect the machine that is the industrial food complex and present solutions and actionable plans that you can take to your own community or employ in your own life to bring you a little bit closer to a natural lifestyle, an organic lifestyle, and one that's going to bring you peace and prosperity. Before we dig too deep into problems and solutions, I wanted to start off by making a few videos discussing and defining terms that we'll use in the series, terms that you've probably heard in other places and may have not been explained in a way that's easy to digest. And so to kick things off today's episode, we're going to talk about what is organic, its definition, what it is not, and why it's important. So, like many that grew up in a rural community, surrounded by farmers, surrounded by farming, surrounded by nature, I felt that I had a pretty firm grasp on what organic meant, and why it was necessary. And it wasn't until 2012 when I read a book called American Terroir by an author named Rowan Jacobson that I really started to have a paradigm shift and dig deeper into understanding what organic meant and why it was necessary. In American Terroir, Rowan Jacobson explains why certain things grow in certain regions and why things flourish in certain microclimates and soil types, and the relationship between these locations and the things that are being produced. This sparked in me, I wouldn't call it an existential crisis, but a crisis of sorts, because I believed that I understood what we were talking about when we were talking about serving organic food in the restaurant, when we were talking about sourcing from local farmers. I thought that I had a pretty good grasp on what that was. And so to refresh my memory, I went to the Merriam-Webster dictionary and I looked up what the definition of organic was. And the definition given in Merriam-Webster dictionary is of relating to, yielding, or involving the use of food produced with the use of feed or fertilizer of plant or animal origin without employment of chemically formulated fertilizers, growth stimulants, antibiotics, or pesticides. This is a pretty wordy definition. And obviously, it's pretty straightforward, but it's also pretty wordy. And so over the past, 13 years of my career, I've worked hand in hand with farmers, and I've done a lot of research myself, both historic and current. And what I did was synthesize a definition of organic that speaks to me and speaks to the practices that I've seen. And that's a system of farming that focuses on symbiotic practices and bars the use of external inputs. And when we talk about external inputs, I understand that there can be some gray area, especially within the farming community. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to what external inputs are, but in my experience, the ones who are doing the best, the purest practice of organic is strictly using organic material from their property or from their surrounding community, from animals inside that community, to feed back into the soil. When we grow things, we extract from the soil. Normally what we focus on in industrial farming or industrial organic farming is we focus on 3 inputs. Those inputs are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or NPK as they're called. And there's so much more happening below the soil. There's millions of micronutrients and microbes and minerals involved in producing a healthy product for consumption and something that's going to feed us, like humans, the soil has a microbiome, and biodiversity is very important in that microbiome. When we introduce external inputs, whether they be organic or not, if they are not part of that microbiome, there is a chance that they are not working in symbiosis, they are not collaborating, and they will not result in a product that gives both health and sustenance. When we're eating food that's only being pumped with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, it is entirely possible for a plant to grow, and it is entirely possible for that plant to look like what you imagine a plant for consumption should look like, but it's lacking the micronutrient and microbial makeup that's necessary for us to thrive and not just survive. And so when I really think about organic, I think more about the term symbiotic. Really, organic practices are a symbiotic relationship that you have with your soil, with your atmosphere, and with everything that lives inside the bubble that is your farm. I oftentimes relate it to a child, a family member, if you're a doctor, a patient. The soil is telling you what it needs. As you watch plants grow, it's communicating with you. And this is a dance that's been evolved over millions of years. Before we were on this planet, these practices were being employed through plant life. Whether or not you think that plant life is intelligent, it does have some intelligence because it's evolved without us, and it's done a pretty good job of evolving without us. And so this, for me, is the real definition of organic. This is really what we need to be doing, and we need to be talking about when we're talking about organic or asking for organic. An organic label is, at this point, entirely unnecessary. I think that communication with our farmers and understanding the practices that they're employing when they're saying that they're growing organically is very important. And I think just understanding that relationship that they have, you can tell pretty quickly when you talk to a farmer what their relationship is with their land and what their connection is. And when they are really connected to growing in this manner, they are going to be talking about soil, they're going to be talking about the life in that soil, and they're going to be talking about how they feed life back into that soil, whether it's through crop rotation with plants that feed back these nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium elements, or they're producing on their property some sort of compost from organic matter from their property, whether it be animal, plant, or otherwise. So I think that pretty much encompasses organic for me. So when we're questioning, are we consuming organic, we're looking at what's being pulled from the soil, how are we putting what's pulled back, pulling out from, how are we feeding back into the soil after we're pulling out from the soil, and what is our relationship with the soil? Are we listening to it? Are we doing what it's asking us to do, or are we trying to tell it to do what we want it to do? And part of that comes back to understanding what's capable, what the soil is capable of, and not asking it to produce more than it can. So in short, I think we've wrapped it up here. Organic is a term that's widely used and widely misunderstood, and I hope that this gives you a little bit of clarity into a short definition as we move forward about what we're talking about when we're talking about organic on this channel. And please, if you have any questions, this is an open format, leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share. We will continue down this path of definitions for the next couple weeks before we really dig into the meat of the problems that we face in the industrial food complex, and presenting community-based solutions to activate a movement inside your own community, inside your own life, to bring you a little bit closer to symbiotic practices and a symbiotic lifestyle. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.